Well, hey, everybody, and thanks for joining us. It is the 15th of June, and boy, do we have a lot to talk to you about. Just yesterday, Mike and I did a panel about what happens when your vendor is hacked. If you didn't see it, a lot of great feedback on that one. Take a look at our YouTube channel, which may be where you're watching this, so you can just click on the next video. Um, quick note, there's no security awareness training this week. We'll go back to it next week. And we did a video this week, but I want to talk about it again because I feel like this is a really important, seminal moment in ransomware and healthcare. A hospital in Illinois, Mike, has decided to close its doors. Like, it is like not just for a short period of time, like they're done after a ransomware attack.
Well, I think they're getting acquired too. It's so eventually, if they're picked up by a bigger chain, they will eventually come back. But in the interim, people. I mean, this is a rural hospital. People are going to have to drive far away. They were a major employer in the town, so the knock-on effects, from one of these events travels pretty far.
Yeah, I mean, and it is infuriating that this kind of thing happens. And that, one, that there are attackers who do this, two, that we allow healthcare to be in such a perilous state that, one, they can get locked up by ransomware, but two, it wasn't just that, it was all of these financial factors that, the ransomware was, the thing that pushed the dominoes
Yeah.
over. It's really awful. And I know you've done some media on it this week, and um, but really awful. And then just yesterday, the is it FBI CISA put out
It is both of them
both
together.
of them, yeah, put out a joint cybersecurity advisory about Lockbit ransomware. And it was unusually detailed and long, didn't you think?
Yeah, well, there's two parts of it, right? First they describe it, in kind of a narrative way, right? It's a gang.
Hmm.
Um, then they talked about the TTPs they use, right? The tools, techniques, procedures, right?
Sure,
How
sure,
how
yep.
they get in. But I think more importantly, and it was the long part of this, it's the indicators of compromise. It's what you can search your network for in order to determine whether or not they have a presence in there. So, find that, take that to heart, see if you can implement that because it's really good. It, like you say, it's extremely detailed information.
Yeah, and depending on what platform you're on, I just posted a link to the whole thing, the PDF, in the chat. You can looks like it posted to YouTube and Facebook. Mike's favorite platform, Facebook. All right. But serious topic. Be very careful. If you don't have an outside service provider to help you, make sure that you are defending yourself. That you're looking for those indicators of compromise. Get in touch with somebody. ASAP. Or as I would say, ASAFP, and the F stands for feasibly. All right, Mike. You had other big news. Barracuda.
It's we talked about this last week, I think. The problem with the Barracuda firewall. It turns out that if you got hit with this stuff, it can't be removed. And so Barracuda is saying all of their ESG appliances that have been compromised by this have to be replaced immediately. And so, they're taking a big write down on this.
Hmm.
The other one is Fortinet. Fortinet, the gift that keeps on giving. There's a remote code execution flaw in their SSL VPN product.
You have a
It,
weird vision of what gifts are, but okay.
well, these are the things that we're starting to see with alarming frequency.
Hmm.
Fortinet is becoming Chrome, and every time there's some kind of problem with one of their devices, the scanning starts immediately to find them and they get exploited right away. And anybody that's dragging their feet on patches is probably going to get swept up every time one of these announcements comes out. So it's something that somebody needs to be glued to, and make sure that somebody is responsible for making sure that these patches get applied with alacrity.
Yeah, patch now, patch now, patch now. Also, don't forget to restart your Windows machine.
That's right. If you have the orange dot.
Right, right. I got to tell you all a funny thing that happened this week. Whenever Mike is on internal calls and somebody shares their screen on Teams, the first thing Mike does is look to see if they had an orange dot, and a staff member had gone 12 hours without restarting, and Mike was like, "Hey, you hang up." So yes,
Hey,
yes,
we're a
in fact,
security company, man.
we're
That's
a security company. Absolutely, it's just
and
funny
like I've
that.
said, they're coming after us, right? I
Yep.
told you about all my login
What
failures from all over the world, all that stuff.
whatever slide you're trying to show Mike on the screen, he's just looking at that orange dot, and
I'm
he
looking at
can't
the
pay
bottom
attention
right.
to
That's
anything
right.
else. Yep, that's right.
Yep.
That's right. Hey, we talked a little bit about healthcare before, but I want to come back to it. The health breach notification rule might change, Mike.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. There's the health breach notification rule, and this is specifically talking to you have a company that you have contracted that is providing records management and things like that on your
Hmm.
behalf. You have to report if they lose records, and this was always the way it was anyway. So I'm not entirely certain, you
Hmm.
know maybe this is just about unauthorized sharing or something like that, right? There's like peripheral amounts of sharing you might do with a vendor. So they said you have to include your third parties in this, which is similar to the new piece of NIST 800-66R2, which says that in your incident response planning, you have to include your third parties in your incident response plans. So if something happens at a business partner that
Right.
is housing records on your behalf, and and here's they're saying that they have to notify, you have to notify, you also have to assist in the response there, which makes sense to me. But it's just another sign of everything changing and being very focused on third parties, supply chain, everything that we hear every day now.
Yep. Yep. And medical devices have also come into the news this week. I mean, they always do, but hey, there you go.
Well, I mean, this is the new worry, right? Now, and when they were talking about medical devices in this particular article, they're not talking about insulin pumps. What they're talking about is iPads used by physicians.
Hmm.
Okay, because those are largely unmanaged devices,
Sure.
or they can be, not everywhere. I think in the larger organizations those are managed devices, but still, you know, the physicians are the ones that make the money for the hospital. They got a long leash. They get to do what they want for the most part.
Hmm.
And so now they're worried about, well, did you take that home? Did you let your kid use it? Right? And these are good things to be concerned with.
Hey, and one thing for anyone, so regardless of whether you're in healthcare or not in healthcare, there are a lot of companies out there that do, that can find all these devices on your network, whether they be IoT or OT or iPads or whatever. I'm thinking of Armis and Order and Medigate,
Hmm.
Assembly, Scenario, and I'm sure there are others. One of the things that you want to make sure of is remember that that's just a cyber tool and it's sending off alerts. You want to make sure that if you have your own SOC, whether it's internal or external, that your SOC can see those alerts that are coming off of those systems. I talked to somebody a couple of weeks ago, and they hadn't quite thought about how many alerts are coming off. So I think they were specifically talking about Armis, but any of those. And anyway, just make sure your SOC can see those and do what they need to do. All right, Mike. The other thing was, what was it 2 years ago? JBS, the meat
Maybe it's
folks. Yeah,
meats. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I saw a note this week about, or an article this week. Their security ahead of that was probably not what it should have been.
yeah. And it's interesting that this is coming out from a public records request, right? Which means when there was government assistance going in there because clearly critical infrastructure right before a holiday, right? You're messing with our hot dogs.
Hmm.
Um, they captured a lot of information, and you're going in there and looking around at controls. Let's just say that their controls were not exemplary, and the wording used in this article, and I don't know if you caught this. They have observed a massive number of malware infections inside JBS, okay, including one called Configure. Have you ever heard of that?
Oh yeah.
Right? That's like from 2004 or something like that. I mean, I knew an FBI guy that did nothing but travel around the country dealing with Conficker for just the longest time. He hated it. But the fact that the fact that they still have an active Conficker infection is amazing. So, what that tells me, JBS Meats is probably food and ag sector. I don't know, but I think it's a lot of manufacturing commonality right
Sure.
there. And I think that is something that is probably pervasive in manufacturing, as well as the extent to which food and ag uses, automation and things like that. I can't imagine that they had a thought to security when they started to put stuff together to make their operations more efficient.
Yeah, I mean, if you have malware on your system from, pre-ransomware
20
days.
years ago? No.
I mean, I wasn't even born 20 years ago, so there you go.
Mhm.
Okay. Um,
Yeah, but add to that, okay? The DOJ keeps coming out, and they call it's Civil Cyber Fraud
mhm.
Initiative, and it's all about holding companies accountable for ensuring that data are secured. When they're talking about data, they're generally talking about records, personally identifiable information, things like that. But this is starting to extend to just generic publicly traded corporations.
Mhm.
And going back to JBS Meats, this is the kind of thing, if this had happened, let's say a year from now, when some of this legislation gets passed and into statute, and the FTC and the SEC and everybody's all on the same page here, JBS Meats is not going to be able to show their security papers, and they're going to get fined for it before something happens.
Yep. Hey, so there's a story I want to tell. So a friend of mine who got laid off is looking for a job and went through 3 interviews with 3 different people, and was really excited about this job, and it turned out to be a scam. And I feel awful for him. Having gone through this, seemed legit. It was for, it's a legit company, but obviously these people were saying they work for the company and they don't. And now it looks like that's the North Koreans that are doing something like that.
Oh yeah. So, I have showed, in fact, in our security awareness training, I show the pictures from people on LinkedIn that are reaching out to me that are clearly not who they say they are. Okay.
Right.
But this tactic that the North Koreans, and by the way, did you hear that, they're doing this in part to go after cryptocurrency wallets, and apparently they've stolen $3 billion over the last 5 years. Okay, what they masquerade as recruiters, IT workers, government officials, whatever, and they'll even get Westerners to stand in for interviews to give that that patina of believability there, and then you know once they get inside, like if it's a software development company, they'll start they'll start making changes to products that allow them to be hacked. That is playing a long game, and for whatever kind of backward country we thought North Korea was, just because of their isolation and everything, these guys are good at what they do.
Yeah.
And you know even though Jen Easterly, the director of CISA, came out vociferously this week and said that the China cyber attacks are really the defining threat of our time, which has got, I think, a lot to do with what happened in Guam, and the fact that we saw them really hit critical infrastructure, and the idea that they, or at least the theory of what they were doing, was they were going to be prepared to disrupt communications if there was something that happened in Taiwan, and Guam being the nearest kind of naval installation there.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, yeah, North Koreans are stealing money. uh you know Chinese knocking down infrastructure just for the sake of knocking it down, I think, is a bigger threat.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. All right, Mike, threats and vulns. What do you got for folks?
Okay. So there was a set published, kind of a catch-all, and it's a pretty good one to review. So the top vulnerabilities so far of 2023. So JSON Web Token, that's 23529. Chat GPT, which is actually a Python vulnerability. It's not Chat GPT, but you can use it to game it. 288 58, Apache Superset 27524,
Mhm.
Papercut 27350, Fortinet FortOS, strangely enough, 41328, Adobe Cold Fusion 26360, and then there's the Move It vulnerability that seems to really keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. And apparently there have been a lot of organizations that have been hit by this, and that's 34362. So that's a snapshot of at least what one reviewer thought was the most important ones of this year. Your Microsoft patch dump just fixed 78 problems, but there was no 0 days in there, so that's good.
Yeah.
And I'll just say one thing that we have been observing as a SOC operation. There's an IoT botnet that is being built and has gone from something like 20,000 nodes to 400,000 or something like this, and it's people's home equipment,
Mhm.
and they're using that for DDoS specifically against telecom networks like Nokia.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mhm.
All right. At the end of all these, you have a story that makes us chuckle, makes us think a little deeper. What do you got
Oh,
this
this one
week?
will get you to think deeply, deeply. Okay, so
What do you got?
so
And now,
there's
now I'm thinking deeply about what it might be. Go ahead.
okay, so there's new competition, and what they're doing is they're getting artists to make videos that have I don't know if it's really cryptography, but hidden messages in them that can most easily be deciphered by a person on a psychedelic trip who's been eating mushrooms or taking LSD or DMT, right? Ayahuasca, stuff like that. And so there's cash prizes. So, if you live in Washington like we do, just go
Uh-huh.
outside and pick some mushrooms, see if you can figure out what the hidden message is and win some money. It's code breaking, but with a twist. No?
Can I just submit watching The Wizard of Oz with Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon?
I think maybe.
Okay. By the way, do not follow Mike Hamilton's advice. They're like
Yeah.
the do not there are
I'm not a
things
doctor. I
there,
can't prescribe things. Okay.
and do not go pick random mushrooms in Washington state. This goes very poorly for some folks.
Hmm.
There are a lot of time in cybersecurity. Follow Mike Hamilton's advice. In everything else,
Probably ignore it.
especially what to eat, don't he eats gas station burritos. Be very
Yeah.
careful. All
Is
right,
there a
everybody.
point coming?
Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
All right. Bye.
Bye.